Dare great things for Christ. Christ calls us to dare great things. In the marketplace, as well as in the mission field, there has never been a time like the present for the spirit of the Catholic entrepreneur. Now is the time for men and women of great courage and great vision to engage our church and our culture. Now is the time to dare great things. And here is your host as we dare great things, Father Nathan Cromley, the president and founder of the St. John Institute.
In the myriads of articles and books written on leadership, it's astonishing how few times truth is mentioned. Certainly there are many reasons for this, but the fact that so many feel as if truth can be omitted from a conversation on leadership only underscores its importance, especially for Christian leaders. But for many of us, the question remains, why is truth important? Does truth divide us rather than unite us? And if there is a truth, how do we come to know it? Welcome to the first of a series dedicated to these questions. Thanks, everybody. I'm glad to be back with you again and excited that we have this chance to have a class together on truth. And I want to talk about this specifically because it's one of those questions that people get very passionate about, or they end up wanting to ignore. Truth is not a real popular subject. Let's just start with it that way. And I think it's because for most of us, whether you're passionate about it or whether you want to ignore it, it doesn't seem to have a large ramification on our practical life. And since we're in leadership and we're therefore all about practical results of actions and our words, our character, all these things, we're about results. We're not really concerned about things that seem abstract. And I think that many concepts that seem abstract, truth and the nature of truth is one of the most abstract. And so we want to put it a little bit on the side. And then on the other hand, you have a whole series of people who have been really hurt in their lives by people who have used the concept of truth in a way that has diminished their dignity. You have people who, in the name of truth, have cut them off from relationships, or in the name of truth, have limited love and acceptance. And so those types of people then say they don't want anything to do with truth because truth is something that has been harmful to them. And so they can kind of see it as a term that gives people privilege to then excuse those with whom they differ. And so both of those kind of scenarios have rendered speaking about truth in today's context something that it just doesn't seem like a place where we really need to have that many battles, right? And I want to underscore this a little bit more because when you read the writings of some of the popes, for example, I'm thinking especially Pope John Paul II, you hear a lot of descriptions about the world today, the modern mind that we're engaging with that underscore the fact that for the modern mind, truth is not at the forefront of importance. And I just kind of wonder to myself, well, what happens in a world that is no longer concerned about truth? If we're not concerned about truth, how do we know that we are really encountering something good? Like, how do we know that the direction that we're taking or the way that we're leading our families and our companies, our businesses is actually right? I mean, if there is no truth, then is there a right or is there a wrong? Or is there no longer a right or a wrong, but rather only something that's practical? I'm thinking an example of that is what you hear coming, in a lot of the political discourse on both the right and the left. There's almost like a Machiavellian, opening here in our culture, where instead of us saying, well, no, the leader is obliged to do what is right, what is truly good, we say, well, the leader has to do whatever is expedient in order to make practical improvements, right? Because how are we to know what is truly good? Can anyone really say, this is good, this is bad, this is therefore right, and this is therefore wrong? Well, those two distinctions about what is good and bad and right or wrong are linked to whether or not the mind can say this is true and this is false. And so in a world where we're skeptical and where we put truth on the side, there's going to be an impact in the way that we gauge what we should be doing and what we should avoid doing. What is really the right direction for our leadership to take, and what the real goal is for our company, for our finances, for our families, and what is a mistaken path, or a path that is inferior, right? There's a big impact to this question of truth, because it allows us, if you say that there is a truth, you're then allowed to create hierarchies of judgment, where you can say that this is objectively better than that, and that this state of being is preferable to this one. And therefore my leadership is justified because of this or this or this coefficient. In a world that denies truth, well, then who is to say except the people who hold the power about what is preferred or expedient or the goal to which that we should attain? You kind of suspend the moral judgment on leadership, and it becomes a pure function of the ruling power, whatever that might be, in your corporation, in your family, in your social settings. There's always somebody or something that everyone has agreed has the authority to direct action. It could be the quest for money. It could be the quest for a better economy. It could be the quest for ease or the pleasure of being accepted. There's something there, a concept. And that ruling concept will then become the arbiter of practical truth in leadership. And this is not, however, a Christian concept. The Christian concept is different than that. Christian concept says, no, leadership needs to aim towards what is objectively right, what is really good. And so right away, I think there's a challenge point. I think a lot of folks say, well, I don't think I know what is objectively right. Or how do I know what is truly good, right? And so I want to talk about this because it's really important. Because if you start to say, how do I know and how can I know and how is it possible to know, as if it wasn't possible, remember, you're going to not be able to defend a Christian stance of saying that we're here to lead in an objective way towards the flourishing of the human person in society. And you're going to be forced instead to say leadership's just a function of power. And there's going to be a result of that in the civilization that proceeds from that determination. It's that fundamental. The way you answer this question will determine the future of the society and the culture that you build, the community that you construct, both small and large. Now, I just want to make sure that we have an understanding here at the beginning of this. We're about practical things. The leader is about practical things. The question I'm asking is a philosophical one that informs our leadership. And it is this: can you say that your leadership is objectively good? Will you dare to say that what your decisions you are making are right? And is there value in doing so? All right, so I'm going to answer the question for you just, really bluntly at the beginning here. And that's for a Christian, the answer to that is yes, okay? If you are not convinced that you are actually, really, that is truly leading your people in the right way, you better not be leading them. Okay, leadership is not accidental for a Christian. Leadership is instrumental, not accidental. It's instrumental. It comes with the authority that comes from God. It's a sacred thing. God made man, according to Christians, in his image and likeness, and gave the man and women, right, the dominion over the animals of the earth. And he entrusted all of the welfare of the Garden of Eden, that in which he planted man, to man, so that he could there, by his use of his gifts, make that world a better place. It's not neutral, therefore. God has given us talents. God has given us dominion or control over the world so that we can govern it well. There's an objective, in other words, end goal here willed by God, an objective measure of standard, which is whether a thing is not better, closer to what is objectively really it's good at the end of our endeavors than at the beginning. And of course, this is what's emphasized again when Jesus is in front of Pontius Pilate, and Pontius Pilate says, don't you know I have the authority to crucify you, or the authority to let you free? And Jesus said, you would have no authority over me if it had not been given to you from above. Right? And St. Paul will later on say that all authority in heaven and earth comes from God. So if that authority that we exert, if it really be true and authentic in who we are, well, it's something that has a reference point. It comes from God. And therefore, there's an objective source and an objective goal to what we're doing. We need to use it at his service. So for a Christian anyway, this is a really important question. What does it mean to be in truth? How do I exercise truth in a way that's inclusive and helpful to people and not hurtful? And then thirdly, where do I get truth? How do I know it? And I want to tackle these questions with you.
Would you like to hear more from Father Nathan? Join the St. John Leadership Network and receive a 2-minute glance at the gospel every Sunday morning right to your phone. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
All right, so here on the St. John Leadership Network, we try to tackle tough things, right? And I want to talk with you about truth today in our leadership. And so, thank you for coming to this little seminar with me, and thank you for taking the time to deepen your understanding of your leadership. Let's dive into this. I want to start by citing a reference, which is Pope John Paul II. I mentioned him just a little bit ago. He wrote a document called Fides et Ratio, or Faith and Reason. And on September 14th, 1998, he came out with this. So it was just a little bit ago, about 30 years ago. But in his, he really sums up the situation that I want to ponder with you. He says, quote, "In the present letter, I wish to pursue my reflection by concentrating on the theme of truth itself and on its foundation in relation to faith. For it is undeniable that at this time of rapid and complex change can leave especially the younger generation, to whom the future belongs and on whom it depends, with a sense that they have no valid points of reference. The need for a foundation for personal and communal life becomes all the more pressing at a time when we are faced with a patent inadequacy of perspectives, in which the ephemeral is affirmed as a value and the possibility of discovering the real meaning of life is cast in doubt." John Paul II continues with this really, really stunning insight. He says, "This is why many people stumble through life to the very edge of the abyss without knowing where they are going." He's got this image, people stumbling through life without even knowing where they're going. And it's a poignant one because it seems so self-evident. If you don't know that there is a truth, then you don't know the true way to go. If you end up saying, we don't know if we can actually know anything, because knowledge itself has become, so splintered and so specialized that you feel like you have to have more data and more studies just to, in fact, corroborate the data and the studies that you started with, that you can go endlessly down a rabbit hole into smaller and smaller specificities with experts who claim that they're studying to try to know if they can know even the smallest thing. And so it's like, what about bigger questions? We don't even try to go there. What is love? That's a great big question, right? What is God? What happens when we die? What is the meaning of life? And then there's so many contradictory answers. One religion has this answer, another religion has this answer, this thinker has this to say, this one has this to say. And so anyone who's really looking for answers can quickly grow frustrated, because we say in the end, my goodness, the people who claim to know all differ. And so it's much easier to simply say, we don't know. Well, then what's the impact that that's going to have on leadership? Parents that don't know what to do with their children will end up letting the schools who claim to know tell them what they should do with their children. Or married couples that don't know how to find love for each other might simply choose to fall out of love as quickly as they fell into it, and then declare that falling out of love is just as valid as them falling into it. And then our young people are left asking the question, like the Pope said, like, what is the real goal of anything? Is there really a purpose to building? And of course, politically then, the political thought of a nation at large, or of a state smaller, of a city even smaller than that, the political will to find something and to fight for something and to build in a given direction, becomes subject to question. Is it not just the whim of those in power to build in this way or that? And politics breaks down to where you could even have, of course, and we hope we never get there, but you could have the defeat of the civilization built on the political will that is seeking to strive after what is objectively good. And I know these are a lot of really concepts that are very complex, and I'm linking them in a very simplistic fashion. But the links that I'm making, even if they be simplistic in this discourse here, they're true at the same time. There will be an effect. And it's really very interesting to go back to those. And even looking at a bigger question, kind of like, well, where am I going to end up in the leadership in my family? I'd say, well, if you don't define the end goal for your family, what's going to take you there? Where will you end up? Will you end up where you want it to be? How do you bring a family into a culture that is really the best that it can have if you're not able to define what that is? And so just be very careful. It's kind of in fashion today to say, we're not sure that we believe in truth, or let's not say that there is any absolute or objective truth. But remember the impact that has on a leader. As soon as you say that as an intellectual, you end up taking away from the leader the backbone and the strength that supports their authority. You've really just said, we'll only do what you say because you're in charge. There's no reason beyond your power for us to do what you want to do. And this is why it's so important for us to regain this confidence in a boldness and a joy in the truth. This was even recognized in the very first Christians. If we go back to the Acts of the Apostles, one of the things that really denoted when Simon Peter preached, or when any of the 12 apostles for that matter preached, there's a Greek word that was used to describe the way that they spoke, and it's pareia. And that pareia in Greek literally means forthright, clear, putting out there what is true in a bold fashion. They usually translate it as being bold in their speech. And what they mean is they said things as if they were true. And not only that, but it's a hallmark of the work of the saints that oftentimes the saints would take a position contrary to that of the society that they were in, proclaiming that they serve the truth rather than serving the human opinions of those who were in power at the time. I think of the death of John the Baptist, for example, who died because he was criticizing Herod, who had taken his brother's wife to be his wife. And John the Baptist said, you cannot do that. It is not a truly good action. And Herod killed John the Baptist for as much. Or look at St. Stanislaus of Krakow, Poland. And in order to defend the rights of the poor, he was actually martyred. And he went to his death, saying, leadership is not arbitrary. There is an end goal defined by God, defined by what is truly good. And the responsibility of the leader is to not serve his own whim, but to serve the people's desire to reach that end good, right? And it's the same thing, therefore, with your business. You take a look at your companies, you're like, well, what's the purpose of this company? You say, well, the purpose of this company is to make a profit. You say, well, not really. I mean, profit is more of an effect than a purpose. Okay. If you pursue the purpose, you can't do it without money. Money is like a sine qua non condition. That's what they call it in philosophy. It means it's a necessity. Okay. We get that. And is a desired good. Yes, of course. But the business itself does not exist just for the sake of what it produces. This is what's important. The business produces things on the outside by producing things on the inside of the workers, the culture it produces, the environment produces, the opportunity it produces, and the people it influences. And you see, now that's, well, how do we know all of those things? And that's what we're going to get to. How do we know the truth? We got to get there. But I want to make the point, first of all, that it's essential to have it. The Christian worldview is a view that says we know the truth in God, and we pursue that truth in our actions. That our faith and what we absorb at church has practical implications in our actions. And the world today might not really accept that, or many people might struggle with that, and that's fine. But they're going to be attracted to it by the beauty of the truth that we embody. The truth of a God who sent his son to die for us. And the truth of a son who sent us in the world to serve it and to make it better with our talents and dedication. Right? So the Christian life itself, the life of a Christian leader, becomes a witness to the importance and the beauty of affirming this truth that is in God.
Would you like to start your Thursday mornings with a scriptural leadership lesson? Join the St. John Leadership Network, where Father Nathan hosts a 30-minute call at 6:30 a.m. in all 4 U.S. time zones. To learn more, go to www.sjohn.org. www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
You know, we're talking about truth. We're talking about something that is hard for a lot of people. And it's because a lot of times folks, and be honest, many times it's good Christians, right? The Christians ourselves are our own worst enemy because we go out there telling a world to be attracted to truth, and then we don't make truth very attractive. You know, it ends up becoming something that can be, we can think of it as closed-minded. We can think of the different stereotypes that it can maybe engender if it's, mistreated, not the truth itself, but that people who claim truth can just sometimes be very divisive because of it. And so people on the outside are like, well, if truth means being, not kind, not loving, not welcoming, then we don't want it because we'd rather have love than truth. Of course, I just need to be a little bit of a stickler on this, but you can't have true love if you don't have true love. Without truth, there is no true love. Right? So going a little bit deeper to help explain this, truth is necessity. Okay. To deny it's almost like asking someone, listen, is it true that there's no truth? And the person will say, yes, that's absolutely true. And I'll say, is it objectively true that there's no truth? And they'll say, it's objectively, absolutely, universally true that there's absolutely no universal, absolute, and objective truth. And you just kind of shake your head because you have to affirm truth, okay? Truth is saying that something is, right? So when you say this is true, what it means is that the thing exists. And then our job in our mind is to open our mind to try to understand that truth in our mind as it is in reality, as it is outside of reality. It's called the adequation theory or correspondence theory, if you want to get into that, of truth. And St. Thomas Aquinas, the Catholic theologian, was a big proponent of it. And of course, it totally makes sense. As to say that my mind can actually assimilate, which is a fancy word, but it's like to consume or to digest the reality that is outside of it into a concept which corresponds. Now, the thing is the concept never corresponds exactly. That reality always remains somewhat bigger, more mysterious than our own mind. And that means that I don't say that I possess the truth as much as I say I am possessed by the truth. Right? I possess the truth in the form of a concept, but my concept is relative. It depends upon what I have perceived and experienced in the reality that's outside of the concept, that's the source of that concept. And what does this mean? It means I can always learn. But at the same time, it means that I do know something. So it would be silly to walk around saying, I don't know anything. It's impossible to know anything. There is no truth. It's a self-contradicting statement, like I said. Because if it's true that there's no truth, then life doesn't make any sense at all. Of course there's truth. It's just that sometimes we're afraid that if we say we know truth, that means that then we become judgmental and we become superior, and we've issued all kinds of divisive hierarchies into our world. Not necessarily. Actually, I think it's on the contrary. Because if you know that your thoughts actually are dictated by and relative to a reality that is wonderful, expansive, beautiful, attractive, engaging, well, then why you will never say that your thoughts are equal to that reality. Your knowledge of a river will never replace being in a river itself. In fact, it's why you would keep going back to the river. You would actually go swimming in the river because you know it. And it's not despite the fact that you know it. It's just the opposite. And in the same way, learning about that experience, whatever it is that you know, it becomes an appetite of your soul. I want to speak with other people who know other things or maybe more things or have different vantage points from me about this reality, which is just so wonderful. And so on the one hand, I begin my knowledge of truth by saying that I know it. And then I continue that knowledge of truth by dialoguing with everyone else who claims to know it too, even if they disagree with me. And which is very important because it means claiming truth does not divide. Claiming truth actually unites. Because now I'm actually engaging with people who are different from me. If I say there is no truth, I also say there's no reason for us to find unity. Right? There can't be any real unity at the deepest part of who we are if there's not an appetite inside both of us for the same thing, so that we can find in the other what we miss in ourselves. Right? This is very important for our leadership, because as Christians, we're going to want to say, well, I find that truth, of course, from God's holy word in his Bible. We believe in a revealed truth, that God spoke his word in his son, and that his son's truth is fully and faithfully transmitted to us in written form in the sacred scriptures. That's an incredible statement, saying that we're not wandering around in the dark. We know if we want to know what we're supposed to do with our leadership at business, we need to go back to the Bible, and we need to read it and find it there. It might not be easy, but we can find it. In the same way, we as Catholics affirm, unabashedly, that we can also discover truth by the power of our reason. Not to replace the Bible, but rather to read the Bible intelligently and to also explore the sciences and the world with our reason. That in the light of reason and the light of Scripture, respecting the different levels that each has, we're able to know something that's true and then offer a guiding light to the whole world. This is our role as leaders, and it's so important that we grasp it. Don't be afraid of claiming truth. Claiming truth is the same as claiming leadership. The moment you claim truth, you claim the right to be a party in the dialogue, and that great dialogue of humanity about the end goal of that we all strive for, and the means by which we should attain it. You accept the responsibility of bringing this world as a leader sent by God and in his footsteps to the true good. And that's no small thing.
Dare great things for Christ.
Share your feedback with Father Nathan. Send us an email at communications@stjohninstitute.org. That's communications@stjohninstitute.org. And visit www.stjohninstitute.org and sign up for our newsletter to receive updates from Father Nathan.